In Kenya, people are protesting against a new finance bill that introduces unpopular tax proposals, igniting widespread anger across the nation. Demonstrators are upset with the bill, which President William Ruto argues is necessary to address heavy public debt. The controversial bill contains provisions seen as imposing extra burdens on ordinary citizens and businesses, sparking an outcry from a public already struggling with the high cost of living. Although the Kenyan government has withdrawn some of the contentious proposals, so far it has done little to alleviate public anger.
Yeah, because look at what's happening. Young Kenyans are demonstrating for their rights. They're demonstrating with flags and banners. I can't even see anymore. They're being tear gassed. They're being
The finance bill was introduced in Parliament earlier in May 2024 and faced intense debate last week, with opposition lawmakers supporting the angry protesters. The following is a summary of what the bill originally proposed. The initial provisions of the bill included a plan to introduce a 16% sales tax on bread and a 25% duty on cooking oil. Additionally, there was a proposed increase in the tax on financial transactions and a new annual tax on vehicle ownership amounting to 2.5% of the vehicle's value. In response to the public outcry, the government announced it would drop these measures. Another proposal in the bill was the eco-levy, intended as a charge on products contributing to e-waste and environmental harm. Critics argued that the eco-levy would increase the cost of essential items such as sanitary pads, which was considered as being largely insensitive given that many girls unable to afford these products often miss school during their periods. Babies' nappies would also be affected by the eco-levy. Following public outcry, the government announced that the levy would apply only to imported products, arguing that this would boost the growth of local industries. Another primary focus of this eco-levy is digital products such as mobile phones, cameras, recording equipment, TVs, and radio devices. An increase in the cost of these products is viewed as detrimental to the growth of Kenya's digital economy, which many people depend on for their livelihoods. Lastly, the bill also suggests raising the import tax rate from 2.5% to 3% of the item's value payable by the importer at the port. This increase comes just a year after the rate was lowered from 3.5% to 2.5%. Some people in Kenya argued that the bill exacerbates existing hardships coming amidst rising food and living expenses and following previous tax hikes in 2023. They contend that these taxes would drive up overall living costs. Demonstrators assert that since President William Ruto's government took office in 2022, they have faced escalating taxes without commensurate improvements in public services. They accuse the government of using taxation not to enhance social amenities but for corrupt purposes. Meanwhile, Kenya's President William Ruto, who campaigned on promises to make life easy for Kenya's working-class hustlers, has justified the tax hike proposals, saying that they are necessary to pay off a public debt of approximately 11 trillion Kenyan shillings that Kenya is saddled with. A lot of that money is owed to China. Kenya's proposed tax hikes have sparked protests throughout the country. Last week, demonstrators brought the country to a standstill, demanding the entire bill to be scrapped. They called for widespread protests as well as a national strike to pressure the government about the bill. On Tuesday, 18 June, Parliament responded to the protests by announcing emergency changes to the bill. The chairperson of the Finance Committee would later say in a press conference that lawmakers would reverse taxes on bread, oil, vehicles, and financial transactions, including mobile money payments. Despite these amendments, protesters were not satisfied and demonstrations continued even after over 200 people were arrested on that day. On Thursday, 20 June, demonstrators tried to occupy Kenya's parliament buildings where lawmakers were meeting for a second reading of the bill.
And we start this hour in Kenya, where the security forces have clashed with hundreds of protesters opposed to tax hikes put forward by the government. Riot police, some on horseback, have been deployed in the capital, Nairobi, and have fired tear gas in an effort to disperse the demonstrators. The Parliament buildings have been cordoned off ahead of the vote by MPs on the controversial finance bill later today. Many fear the tax cuts will...
Also on social media, young people used hashtags like #RejectFinanceBill 2024 and #OccupyParliament in order to trump up support across the board and have many young people join in the protests. Despite massive demonstrations, on Tuesday, June 25, Kenyan lawmakers passed the bill. This came as no surprise, given that most of the parliament supports President Ruto's Kenya Kwanza alliance. On the same day, Tuesday 25 June, Kenyan police used live ammunition against hundreds of protesters who were trying to breach Parliament House in Nairobi. Protesters broke through barricades around Parliament and entered the complex where lawmakers were discussing the proposal, prompting police to fire live rounds.
And we start with breaking news out of Nairobi, Kenya, where ongoing protests have now inflamed further. We are learning that lawmakers in Kenya's parliament, which is on fire, have been forced to escape through an underground channel after protesters got inside the parliament building. That is according to CNN affiliate NTV Kenya.
Following this, Amnesty International reported that many people had been wounded, with some other sources estimating that at least 10 people had been killed.
Becky, we're on the street. This is one of the main streets here in Nairobi, and we see police in a truck here trying to fire tear gas at the protesters, who in many cases keep sending it back to them. The street is littered with a lot of debris, things that have come from the surrounding offices, and we're quickly getting enveloped with tear gas, as you see here, so we're going to need to move quickly. The protesters have been beaten back.
As at the time of recording, on Tuesday 25 June, Kenya's President William Ruto has not addressed the violence. And as it stands, the bill is now headed to his desk to sign.